Okay, I think we can get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Seychell, and on behalf of the San Francisco Treasury Management Association, I'm delighted to welcome you to today's virtual forum, Bridging the Treasury Tech Divide, AI and Automation in Action. We have a fantastic session ahead featuring real-world insights into how AI and automation are revolutionizing Treasury workflows. A special thank you to our event sponsor, Nilus, for making the session possible and for supporting our local Treasury community. Before we dive into the content, we want to show off a few ways to stay engaged with the SFTMA community. We have our Treasury Community Office Hours coming up on March 19th. So this is a practitioner and chapter member exclusive event where folks can come in and, just like in college, get their questions answered by our quote unquote professors, and then crowdsourced answers from the group as well. And then next we have our April 17th Mix and Mingle Happy Hour. For those who are interested in getting together in person, for service providers, there is a cap on the number of folks who can attend. So if you're interested, please register. And all of our events are free to practitioners. Speaking of which, all of our events are free to practitioners. So please do check out our website and look at what events are available coming up. Really exciting. Our agenda is live for the 2025 San Francisco Treasury Symposium on Thursday, May 15th in Santa Clara. The agenda is jam-packed with awesome educational sessions with thought leaders from around the Bay Area and beyond. So I want to flag that early bird registration ends March 15th, just a few weeks from today. And for chapter members, there is an additional discount as well. And I think this I'm approaching the final slides here. Become an SFTMA member, go to the website to learn more, but you get event discounts, member-only access to certain events, and then a stronger professional network. And for our service providers out there, there are sponsorship opportunities available as well. Only 3 left, though, for the remainder of the 2024-2025 program year. Again, website for all the details and opportunities. Now, on to the main event. Today, we're diving into how AI and automation are actively reshaping Treasury management. Our speakers will share practical applications, case studies, and strategies for integrating new technologies into existing workflows. At the end of the session, the speakers will be taking questions as well, so please feel free to submit them at any time via the Q&A button. I'd like to introduce Matt Harlan, Chief Treasury Officer, to lead the program. Matt's a former SFTMA board member, bringing over a decade of Treasury leadership experience and having led operations at Toast and Samsara. So Matt, I'll turn it over to you and I'll see you guys during the Q&A.
Awesome, thank you so much. Excited to be with you guys today. We have an interesting topic and we also have a very interesting guest here as well. So you heard my intro from Michelle, and ultimately, Treasury is one of those special places where a lot of us have stumbled into the space, and so anytime you get to sit down and meet with fellow practitioners, it's always valuable. I'd like to hand it off also for Alex to intro himself. Alex is one of our customers. He has a deep background in finance. He's over a lot of different functions, and so Alex, if you want to maybe take a few moments to intro yourself also.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate that. So hey, folks, really great to be here. My name is Alex, Senior Director of Global Finance at StackAdapt. I currently oversee our tax and treasury functions. Also going to have a little bit of a hand in our global expansion efforts as an organization. I've been at Stack for just over 3 and change years now, and excited to be here today. So thanks so much.
Awesome. Great. So let's talk about our agenda. Let's get into what we're going to get into so we can advance the slides. We're going to go through a brief intro. And so we're going to hear from Alex to understand what were his unique pain points, what's the lay of the land of his landscape, and also just understand the complexity. As we understand, Treasury is sometimes operating in a short iteration cycles where there's multiple things that need to be done at the same time. And it's really hard sometimes to keep account of everything that's taking place. So we're going to go through the challenges that StackAdapt uniquely faced. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the solutioning. How did Nilus help them? Where was AI relevant? Where was automation relevant? And kind of what was the impact of all those actions and process improvements post that? And we'll get into some Q&A to answer your questions live. So we'll make sure to leave a lot of time for that as well. Great. Let's go on to the next slide. So I just want to give a brief overview of who Nilus is and what we are. Many of you might be familiar with TMS, but not familiar with next-gen TMS. And so Nilus is a next-gen TMS platform, and essentially we are the leader in the space, and we are changing kind of data and visibility for finance and accounting teams from black box to glass box. So actually having an understanding of what your data is doing, what it's impacting. Our platform is kind of positioned in three parts and three layers. The first layer is being able to ingest multiple data from different data sources. So traditional legacy TMS was the bank and the ERP. But now with next-gen TMS, we can look at the bank, the ERP, the CRM, the expense platform. And the way we're able to do this is with really a multimodal connectivity framework where we can read multiple files. We have internal parsers. And so now you can actually effectively use data for your use case to be able to drive outcomes in your forecast, which is awesome. And so the future is here. Let's go to the next slide. The second part of our platform is our data enrichment layer, and that's where we're actually helping the data to make sense. And we know Excel is our biggest competitor, but Excel is messy, it's error prone. And so now you can use an intelligent system that can read the data, that can give you insight. It can do things like run regression on open bills and invoices. It can help you understand timing of payments and really helping you to move more efficiently and proactively throughout your workflows. And then the other piece is our strategic insights layer. And that's where AI is operating as a co-pilot to help us understand what's happening with our cash, what's happening with our exposures, and really helping us to avoid hazards and remove anxiety out of the workflow. This is all yielded to a really quick implementation time. If you've been around the Treasury space for some time, we know that implementation can be an issue. Sometimes it could take months and it can be very expensive. But now with Nilus, it's possible to implement at a fraction of the cost and to really shorten your time to value so you can utilize a system that you probably needed yesterday. Let's go on to the next slide. Great. So leading finance companies are using us around the world. We have both public and non-public companies across many different verticals. Companies that you've seen here like Stack, Made in Cookware, Planned Parenthood, Guestly, Yotpo, etc. That are using Nilus because ultimately it's being able to serve their unique use case. So now teams no longer need to break their process in service of getting automation. They can actually work with a flexible solution that can help meet their use case so they can continue to drive the business. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so seeing is believing. We're going to get into an interactive case study with Alex, our guest here. And first, we're going to start by understanding the lay of the land. So Alex, if you want to start as we advance the slides, help us understand, where Stack was in the process. Help us understand kind of bank accounts, the general nature of finance. Would be great to hear from you on that.
Amazing. Sounds great. Maybe we just go to the next slide there, please. No? Amazing. There we are. Okay, so a little bit about StackAdapt, just kind of setting the tone for what we're dealing with here. So StackAdapt, we're an advertising technology company founded in Toronto. We run a demand-side platform. So what that basically does is it allows media buyers, whether they be brands or advertising agencies, to kind of run their digital ad campaigns through our online platform. And then in terms of kind of like a little bit about our kind of treasury function, a little bit about that. We've got currently six, we're incorporating another one, 7 legal entities. We've got a bunch of different currencies as we have customers all around the world, where we both kind of receive and kind of have to pay funds out of 30 plus bank accounts, 3 different banking partners, then multiple kind of users who are intertwined with all of our various banks and ultimately now plugged into Nilus as well.
That's awesome. And I can imagine, Alex, that, having varied entities across the world, multiple accounts, probably introduce some complexity for you guys. Maybe let's advance the slides and let's talk about what that looked like for your team as you've built out your team and as you're kind of working on bringing that visibility and scalability. I'd love to hear from you on the banking structure. What did that produce in terms of the workload and maybe moving efficiently? I'd love to hear more also about, positioning and having real-time visibility in cash is often important, so we can understand how cash is moving and how we can best utilize it. And then as we kind of take it forward, I'd also love to understand from you, what was the nature of categorizing transactions, and how did you guys think about the positioning of your liquidity?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I'm happy to start a little bit with kind of our banking structure, right? And I'll be perfectly transparent here that I'm sure there's practitioners on who've got far more complex structures than us. I was just on a call with a guy earlier today who had over 300 legal entities. And so, but for technology companies, many of which are kind of like homegrown and just operate with 1 to 2 legal entities, right? Our structure with 3 different commercial banks, each kind of serving us in different ways, created some inefficiencies spanning over 30 bank accounts. Even something as simple as logging into multiple different bank portals to download transactions, each of which have different formats and some dual authentications required. All of this stuff just creates inefficiencies and extra work for team members and having to do very regular, simple treasury operational type tasks, right? And I think that leads really well into kind of like point two, which is like when I think about like critical core treasury operations, like cash positioning is front and center in terms of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And something as simple as us having several banks, because we had several banks, the treasury analyst on the team had to spend, over half an hour a day, depending on the day, going in first thing in the morning, downloading and positioning our accounts first thing in the morning. That's not the most glorious task. Nobody wants to wake up and do it, but you have to kind of do it first thing in
Absolutely.
the morning, right? And then on top of that, there were several instances where I would kind of go in and spot check things, and lo and behold, someone's made an honest mistake because they had to go in and manually download information from bank portals. And what does that do?
Yep.
Suddenly that erodes my trust in my own team. And now I don't know, well, we positioned for the last week every day, but how do I know what we did 3 days ago was right? Right.
Right.
And so that's just a little bit of example on kind of like one and two, some pain points that we were dealing when we started to think a little bit about kind of moving towards a solution like Nilus.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, that's a really interesting point where data integrity can actually lead to a lack of trust. And I completely agree. And sometimes it's out of the span of our control. In many cases, it's because we're moving so quickly within a manual workflow just to make things work. And so, just getting by and just good enough is oftentimes what teams can offer with a structure like that. Speaking of manual nature, is there anything else that was manual within the workflow? So you've kind of logged in to get positions. It's taken multiple times. You and the team are also trying to uncover what is actually true. What else was manual within the workflow?
Oh my goodness, Matt, everything, right? But as I again think about the various components of really core treasury activities, cash positioning is one, and then cash forecasting being that other piece. And that all starts with downloading bank information again from 3 different banks with
Right.
various levels of information and format and manually tagging that into our cash forecasting file. So whenever our team needed to do our positioning and kind of prior to using Nilus, we were candidly only doing this once a week because it would take an hour or a little bit of time to go in and download everything, put it in format, check, do the tagging. And of course, as always, there were little bits of errors here and there that were kind of
Right.
caught. So what did that make us have to do? Well, we only forecasted and updated our forecast once a week. And it eroded again a little bit of my trust on it because some of the activities and some of the information in there wasn't super reliable. So I had to build in extra checks and balances and do spot checks myself too. Not
Right.
exactly the most engaging stuff.
Right. Yeah. And probably not the best use of your time. Right. Um, we've talked a lot about operational aspects of Treasury, which I think are core to your point. They're foundational table stakes. We need to have a visibility. We need to have the ability to forecast. But let's maybe transition and think about the strategic side. I'm pretty sure you guys were trying to make decisions to understand what to do strategically with your liquidity. Do we have enough to cover, our things that we have to, pay in the future? Maybe give me some insight on how you manage that with the team. Like, how did you guys manage understanding the available liquidity and making sure that you had enough to cover the current obligations?
Absolutely, right. And so we maintain a rolling cash forecast file. But as I kind of mentioned a little bit before, there were some challenges with the regularity by which that file was being updated. And then as well, some of those little bits of errors here and there. And what did that lead me as a practitioner to have to do? I mean, I want to, of course, ensure that as an organization, we're maximizing the ROI we can on any cash we have sitting around. But first and foremost, my priority as a leader is to ensure we have adequate liquidity. So there's a bit of a trade-off between the two. And I'd say that our forecasting, which was a little bit inefficient, well, that led to us having to park a bit too much money in those checking accounts that are earning as low as 0%, despite me begging and pleading with the banks, hopefully nobody else is offended, to a lower clip than our savings accounts, our money market funds, or our notice accounts where we could earn a little bit more. And so that inefficient forecasting we had led us to missed opportunities is the bottom line.
Yeah, so it sounds like primed opportunity really for some innovation automation. I want to transition the slides a bit and talk about impact, but before I do, what you just described, I think a lot of folks on the webinar can resonate with. And I think oftentimes there's maybe a view or a position that because everything is so manual in nature, I don't necessarily have capacity to take the next step, right? Automation is so far out of sight because ultimately we're just trying to get by. Just curious, like as we transition to the impact section, what gave you the confidence as a finance leader to say it's actually time to start to take a position to fix this?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? A couple things. I think, fortunately, the organization that I'm at, we like I would expect kind of many growing organizations to have that mindset of is we're always looking and seeking ways that we can be more efficient and more effective in delivering on our OKRs. So that's kind of one thing that I'll say, having that organizational support, I think was super, super important. The next thing I'll say, if we can hit to the next slide there, please. The next thing that I'll say as well is, when I was kind of evaluating partners and trying to look into, what we were ultimately looking to do, I think trying to find a solution that scaled effectively with our team and kind of fit the needs of our organization was going to be really important. And that's kind of part and parcel to the pains or hopefully lack thereof around implementation, right? And then, folks will probably see it on the slide here as well. AI is obviously the hot topic these days. Everyone's kind of talking about that, but it's like, what else is possible? And I think that is something that, we were really interested in as an organization to see, well, we know what we think is kind of possible, but what else could be possible harnessing the kind of power of AI? And then finally is like, can we do more than just treasury stuff in this tool? Right. And those kind of factors ultimately kind of led us to evaluating a few and ultimately moving forward with Nilus.
That's great. That's awesome. I love to hear it. Unfortunately, not all implementations go that way with various partners. And so good to hear that with you and with the solution that it worked out really well. Really thinking about kind of the impact. We talked a lot about the challenges, which I think there's a lot of resonation around. I want to maybe hone in a bit on the visibility aspect. So you mentioned there's a lot of accounts, multiple entities. I would imagine that there's also some currency implications there as well. What was the impact of having this type of system on your overall cash visibility?
I mean, honestly, like I can go in there in a couple seconds now and have a real-time view into everything. I can click some nice buttons, toggle it, see things and manipulate the data a lot easier than I would have otherwise had to in Excel. And the bottom line is, I mean, I think for us, it was something like 30-ish minutes a day of kind of manual work that someone would have to go ahead and do. And whoa, I'm seeing a blank screen. I guess it doesn't like me. I must be talking too much. Oh, we're back. Never mind. I jinxed it and I fixed it. But it ultimately was, someone having to go in there and spend 30 minutes first thing in the morning. So what does that mean? 30 minutes a day, that's 2.5 hours a week is someone's time that they can put that back in their calendar to do other value add work.
Yeah, totally. Do you feel like especially when you think about the visibility time, I know you mentioned there was quite a bit of time in the morning that the analyst was spending trying to parse out what's happening with cash. Do you feel like that has in some ways made your team become less operational, more strategic? I'd love to hear maybe on some of the upscaling, if anybody has continued to take on additional, opportunities within Treasury to kind of think more deeply about the numbers rather than just computing the numbers together.
Absolutely. I mean, the way I like to think about it too, and just talk with my team in general, right, is I'm a big believer of, the one thing, right, where you want to try to, move one strategic or impactful project forward on any given day. And it's hard to do that when you're saddled with necessary operational work that kind of drains your energy first thing in the morning that you have to do because it's a core part of your job. And so
Right.
being able to put that time back in people's calendars, as well as the tagging, which is an even bigger piece. I was running some back the napkin math just the other day, and if I'm saving my team, both the analyst as well as the managers kind of reviewing this stuff, 6 to kind of 8+ hours a week in terms of
Excellent.
this, like that's huge. That's time that they can be spent good, deep work and deep thinking time they can be spent moving strategic projects forward, and I'm seeing that already.
Yeah, that's really great. I think some of us, myself included, before I joined Nilus, we had a negative connotation to the TMS market. Ultimately, we always felt overpromised and underdelivered. I've been on implementations where, I have a 4-person team and I'm putting a full resources time to allocate to implement a project, and it's not going anywhere. In many cases, it makes it more cumbersome. So it's really cool to see, I think, the advancements of next-gen TMS and specifically what Nilus is providing to help decouple that. I think that's been a strong pain point for some time for the community. So it's really cool to see that addressed and even the impact on your side. I'd love to understand about the trust factor again. I know trust is imperative, especially when you're working across a small team in finance. It's high octane work. How did this help really kind of increase trust across your team when you think about enhanced operational efficiency?
Well, that's just it, right? By, trust, as you kind of mentioned, it's a fluid thing. It involves, just kind of regularly executing on things without making mistakes. I'm
Right.
not perfect. Nobody on my team's perfect. Humans aren't perfect, especially with boring stuff that happens all the time. It's a thankless job. If there's any payroll practitioners on, my heart goes out here to you because like that's the most thankless job out there. So by being able to kind of harness the power of technology to take care of a lot of this core operational stuff, that's just helped me build a lot more trust in folks on my team because I'm not catching silly mistakes all the time. So instead, they
Yeah.
can focus their effort on that high impact work.
Yeah, Alex, I love that because oftentimes folks in Treasury don't get any word from up top unless something goes wrong, right? It's like
You
everything
got
goes right for 6 months, and then when it goes wrong, everything needs to be rethought and reevaluated. So I love how this is kind of even helping to increase trust for people in your seat that have a different POV to manage kind of operations as a whole. That's really awesome. Um, let's talk about how important future readiness was for you. How important was it to think about AI? I think AI is still somewhat new to the finance stack and the CFO community. How important was it for you in terms of like finding a solution that's going to continue to scale with you over time?
Yeah, I think you've just, kind of right at the end there hit the absolute nail on the head, right? Like to me, there's no perfect solution out there for anyone, right? But I do kind of firmly believe that there is the right solution for the right organization depending on the life cycle and stage of that, right? And I mean, I'm personally very excited to kind of partner with the Nihilus team, seeing some of the cool and innovative stuff that you guys are doing. And I really feel like there's a continued evolution of the product that's kind of like mirroring the continued evolution of like our organization. AI obviously is a part of that. Me being totally blunt, I'm skeptical about AI stuff, right? I'm honestly skeptical, but at the same time, like that's part of my job is to stay open-minded about what is possible and what's out there. Because if I'm not doing it, our competitors are doing it. And I want to make sure now we're not getting left behind.
Totally. No, I totally agree. And the way I like to communicate about AI to any practitioner community I speak with is it's ultimately not intended to take jobs. It's intended to be an enabling tool to help us move more efficiently. And I think there's no team that feels that need as great as Treasury does because we tend to be small. I think tax is there as well. I know you mentioned payroll as well. And so I think those teams can really benefit from having next gen technology that helps them to kind of scale in that efficiency so they can operate like big, efficient teams that are firing on all cylinders.
Easy for us to augment what we're doing now with AI. I think that's such low-hanging fruit that we can all kind of try to work towards a little bit.
Totally, totally. Awesome. No, totally agree. Great. Let's move on to the next slide if we could. And let's talk a little bit about, some of the impacts. I think Alex has done a phenomenal job articulating things, so I'm not going to give too much light to this, but when you think about the time saving, I think he's been able to kind of transition manual work to automation and saving about 30 hours a week. And so think about the reporting, the visibility, having that access real time to understand what's taking place with cash balances is hugely instrumental. The second piece is around the tagging. So not just having a place where the data is just sitting in one spot, but being able to strategically allocate it to categorization so you can understand the full picture of what's happening in cash and what's taking place moment by moment. And then data accuracy. I think this is a really large point that I don't want to go overshadowed is trust. Improved data accuracy that actually yielded greater stakeholder trust and trust in the team. Everyone wants to be trusted in their role, and sometimes it's really hard to maintain data accuracy whenever there's short iteration cycles. And so I loved how, Alex mentioned, kind of involving technology as a way to gamify that and to increase the efficiency of his team. And then increase optimization of ideal cash. This is the point where we all want to get to. We want to move from just doing the thing to actually managing it and strategically driving the business. And so I love how, Alex and StackAdapt were able to kind of find those pockets of cash and strategically think about decisions to take on how they're going to utilize that cash in the future. Really awesome. Let's go on to the next slide.
And I just want to quickly say one thing. Like that tagging thing is huge. Because it's so funny that in talking to some other practitioners who are, kind of considering alternates or doing stuff manually, like there's a lot of concern around the ability for a tool to be able to tag data. And I was skeptical, but we're at like 95+%. I think it's even higher now in just a couple of weeks, and it's getting better and better. So I've been very, very happy with that because like that forms the cornerstone for the time savings, the accuracy. If I can't trust that auto tagging feature, then it kind of defeats the whole purpose. And I've been very blown away by that, I must say.
Absolutely. That's really great. Yeah. And I think this is actually a really core distinction point between the legacy TMS market, where most of those tagging arrangements are maintained by complex, rule settings, and it's something that needs to be maintained every single day. But with the use of AI as an application, I think that's really great to see how AI is helping you to get greater and more efficiency across tagging, so that you can continue to do what matters most. I think that's really stellar. That's awesome. Awesome. Let's go on to the next slide. This is really great. Oh, we missed one. Okay. So selecting a TMS is, there's a lot of things to consider. I think oftentimes the RFP model sometimes becomes our Achilles heel because we don't actually hone in on what are the true pain points for the team. And I love how Alex kind of articulated that. He walked us through that journey of understanding what was most important for him and having a really clear articulation on where does my team have a gap and how can I solve that gap, and finding a solution to actually fill that void. And so I think it's really important to highlight a couple of key things here. The first one is making sure that there's robust connectivity. You want a tool that can just not integrate with one bank or one ERP, but has the ability to integrate across multiple platforms so that you're not left having part of your data on the table and then the other part not on the table. That doesn't actually increase automation. I think it can increase strain. And so you want to make sure that connectivity is across the entire platform. The second piece is onboarding implementation. And I think, as Alex mentioned earlier, being able to make sure you have that quick time to value, that teams are actually able to get what they need, that they get the support that they need to onboard quickly is super important. You don't want to spend 12 months fantasizing about automation and you've already paid the bill. You want to make sure that you can handle it up front and then you can enjoy the benefits as time goes on. The next one is ease of use. It needs to be simple. It needs to feel intuitive. When you think about Nilus and you think about our forecasting module, for example, it mimics Excel. That's super intentional. Primary reason is Excel is our biggest competitor, but we also know Excel is error prone. And so making sure that it doesn't take a lot of uptime for you to understand how to utilize a system. If it's too complicated to understand, it's going to be complicated to use on a go-forward basis. So the UI needs to be intuitive. And then the third piece I would say is customer service is paramount. This is one of those softer things that sometimes does not get highlighted in RFPs. but it's really important. Is the team local? Do they have a 24/5 model where I can speak to someone if I need help? Is there a hand-holding approach where if I need to do something new that I didn't consider pre-onboarding, that I can actually pick up the phone and call someone to get that support? I think this is super instrumental as you're thinking about TMS selection. But Alex, I want to also just give you a chance to highlight anything that you feel is important here from your process of selecting Nilus as a TMS provider.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think you've done a really, really great job kind of touching on a couple of these things. For me personally, the one or two that the two that jump out the most, the implementation piece is a huge one and a sore spot. And that just comes from lived experiences and butchered implementations. Maybe some of the practitioners on here, whether it be treasury tools or other kind of tech stack tools, have pain points where you're promised the world and then suddenly there's extra fee this and 6 months later that, and you're chasing someone down and you get assigned to another account manager who resigns and there's another account manager, right? I actually feel a little embarrassed with the implementation process because we pride ourselves at StackAdapt at being pretty darn quick at responding, but we're the ones who have been dragging out the process. The Nilus team has been on our case to say, hey, can we, just follow up here, right? So I really, really appreciate that. The implementation is always something I'm really mindful of. And when we look to add to our tech stack at StackAdapt for anything, we make sure that we go out and talk to customers, real customers who use solutions, because often what companies promise is not what they can deliver on the implementation side. And that just kind of goes hand in hand, I think, with the customer support piece, right? Because to me, any good tool, obviously you want to find a tool that meets your needs, get it implemented, then make sure you're kind of partnering with a team that's able to support you as the organization grows and your need and your reliance on the tool grows as well. So those are two things I just kind of wanted to highlight a bit.
I love that. No, I totally agree. Totally agree. Awesome. Let's advance the next slide. Let's talk about building consensus to drive adoption. I think, Alex has mentioned a couple things here that I think are really instrumental, not just to think about TMS implementation, but also selection. The data-driven business case. The Treasury team was working hard to kind of develop this comprehensive business case to highlight the benefits. And I think it's really important that you work with a provider that can help do this for you and with you. Alex, I want to maybe give you a chance here to talk about maybe how Nilus helped you build that business case. What did that look like in your case? And how did you guys get all stakeholders aligned that this was the right decision for Stack?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And it was actually really, really fortuitous timing or interesting timing too, right? We started kind of evaluating Nilus as a tool right around the time that we got a new CFO as an organization. And she's, big on trying to measure ROI, of course, and come up with a business case, right? And so, our approach as we approached her to try to get budget for this was to develop a business case, kind of highlighting some of the benefits that we've talked about today: time savings, error reduction, improved cash management. So
Yeah.
we took that case based on kind of discussions back and forth with the Nilus team, as well as kind of thinking about the future and potentially ultimately to run that by and kind of vet it through her. And she was impressed enough that she said, you know what, I haven't rolled out a TMS in any of my prior orgs, but let's give it a rip and see what happens.
Love it. Love it. And I also love how, when you were talking about some of the pain points, I think it was really clear that your emphasis was not just on, automation, it was also on strategic value. And I love how you were thinking about scalable value as well. And these are things that I think sometimes go missed in the process because we're so focused on solving the first nut to crack, which is, can we just get things connected? But I think it's also important in your approach that you were also thinking about what is this ultimately going to get me in the long term? How is this going to help my team become more efficient? Would love to hear more from you on that kind of strategic scalable value and how that kind of helped you internally build that consensus also.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So again, I think, how we kind of thought about things internally at StackAdapt wasn't necessarily just about how can we save time with what people are doing today. It's ultimately about, my desire and I think the necessity of having Treasury be a key strategic partner to the executive team, to the organization, to the business by by allowing us through some of the visibility that we'll have into our forecast, into our cash, to help empower decision making, right?
Right.
And so that helped us gain additional buy-in throughout the organization. And I mentioned a little bit about the business casing before, and for any practitioners on here, like one thing I'll say is like, as the leader of the treasury function, an organization, like it's my job to proactively update my boss about how there's that continued value, right? So I've got a little Slack reminder in there in April or May where I'm going to ping her and be like, hey, just FYI, here's kind of what we're seeing. I'll update you back again in September, October, right? Because the last thing you want is to feel like you're losing the leash on all of the various tools you have. And so for any practitioners out there, I'd say you can maybe win a little bit of favor with your CFO, with your boss, if you're able to just kind of regularly update and informed of that continued value.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree. Communication is key in that. I think one thing that's really clear is your journey with Nilus kind of exemplifies how embracing modern, scalable technology solution can not only resolve immediate operational inefficiencies, but it can also drive strategic value. I think that's something that often goes underlooked. Having that real-time enhanced cash visibility, having those insights, improving accuracy, making sure that you have a forward-looking roadmap that integrates advanced technologies, that's positioning your company for success and smarter financial decision making, which I think is phenomenal. So Alex, thank you for that. I want to maybe jump into a bit of a demo. I think we've talked a lot about moving from operational to efficiency scaling within Treasury, and I think it's important that we take a look to see what that looks like. So let's jump into the next couple of slides, and seeing is believing. And so let's take a look at the demo. Okay, let's jump into the platform here. So what you're looking at is the cash position screen, and really this tool is really dynamic and powerful. You can view balances across relationships, but not only banks. Think about this as an entire repository for all of your financial data related to cash. We can cut by currency, by subsidiary. We also have the ability to add custom labels. So in the event that you want to add a geotag or mark cash as restricted or non-restricted, you can do that here as well. And then there's type. And so think of loans, investments, merchant accounts, wallets, cash in transit that you like to track across your cash ecosystem, all centered in one place in the platform. To the far right here, we give you a sense of counterparty exposure, FX exposure, so you can stay on top of risk management. And then as we scroll down, we have a view by relationship, by account, broken out in more granular detail. We also have the ability to see the original balance, meaning its original local currency, and then the converted balance using either your ERP rate or a third-party rate source to get a USD equivalent. We also do a back-end validation. I think this is a key differentiator for Nilus. We do a back-end validation across all accounts so that you know that you're working on the most relevant and accurate data to make decisions based off of. Where things get interesting is the ability to kind of pivot across this view to see multiple things. So we can isolate subsidiaries, for example, just to see subsidiaries by themselves. We can also look at currencies in isolation, and we can export and share this data in its native state across our team. Where we add on top of the already existing workflow for positions is the ability to use AI to help as your nearest agent or co-pilot to help you understand what's happening with your data. So AI is doing things like giving us insight of when we're going to have excess balances, when we might have insufficient funds in subsidiaries, and also helping us stay on track to avoid hazards when it comes to FX and financial exposure. On the back end of the system, Nilus is taking all data and creating this repository, enriching the data, and then helping you make strategic decisions based off of that. And so what we're seeing here is a full repository of all bank account data in one place. So we see Wells Fargo, Citi transactions, JP Morgan. We also have a sense to understand the total amount based on this time window that has come in, the categorization rate, and also the aggregate debits and credits, so we can kind of understand the movement of cash. The reason why this is important, and I want to spend time here, is because traditionally with traditional TMS, a lot of this tagging is maintained by multiple rules. I've talked to clients where they're using 10,000 plus rules just to maintain the tagging of their transactions so they can have an accurate view of what's happening within their cash flow. And even when they do set it up, it requires maintenance and someone's full-time job, and so it's not really automation. What we're doing here is we're utilizing AI to help do the automation for you. And so we can see here, for example, that AI has picked out from the Citibank transaction, it's belonging to Rippling, it should be payroll and benefits, and it's non-restricted related to Nilus Global. So now you have an agent that's kind of helping you categorize cash, and you can approve this and accept this change, changing it from purple to black if you feel comfortable, and you'll never have to do it again in the future. The reason why this is important is if you pay attention to this category here, this is the most granular presentment of cash flow that you'd like to see within the system. And so we can see the categorization here. They have vendors, debt payments, marketing, etc. And let's see where all that flows in on the forecasting screen. The way we communicate about forecasting is it's Excel-like in nature, connected to true data sources like the ERP, but then supercharged with AI. And so now we have a tool that's ultimately flexible, that can reduce manual error, and that can also help us drive improvement in performance as we think about setting our near-term and long-term targets in the future for cash. So to orient us around the screen, everything to the left here is historical. This green section is the current iteration of forecast, actual versus forecast. And then this purple section is the out period of forecast. Many different things you can do here. So similar to Excel, this is ultimately flexible. We can change how the forecast is rolling up, half monthly, monthly, quarterly. So every 2 weeks, monthly, quarterly, etc. We can also change the time horizon or change the actual specific window if we wanted to really highlight or hone in to a specific period of time. And then we also have the ability to drill down on a subsidiary basis. So if you want to see everything disaggregated from the parent level to understand what's happening across entities or even currencies to get a sense of cash flow exposure, you can do that here. So this views the parent view. We can also look at entities juxtaposed to one another. We can also look at currencies juxtaposed to one another. And so we get a holistic view across our platform to understand how our cash is performing with many different cuts and segments of data. So I think a big question is, how is the forecast working, right? That's ultimately the main question here that comes to mind when you're looking at a tool like this. And the answer is many ways. So similar to Excel, we can copy and paste into cells. We can add formulas. We can make cells dependent on other categories. We can use expected transactions, thinking about open bills and open AP to help derive our forecast. And we can also use historical data to that end as well. So just to remind us, everything to the left here were those categories that we had set on the transaction screen. So as transactions are coming in, they have the ability to be allocated for our forecast, but also on that transaction screen, we can write to the GL. So pushing back to the ERP to close out and fully automate accounting. When we think about the forecast, as I mentioned, there's many different ways we can compile the numbers. So when you think about the category level, we can forecast using manual input, expected transactions, but now we can also utilize AI to help us derive the forecast. So AI is working as your nearest agent to understand trends, doing analysis on the numbers, and really helping you to land that month end or quarter end target on cash. And essentially, it can help you derive the forecast out for the period that you're looking to track. When we think about workflow management of forecasting, we know that there's multiple pieces involved. And so we need to understand also the tools that are in the system that are going to help us achieve our goals. The first one, very similar to the position screen, is AI. And so we can see here that AI is giving us flags down to the bill and the invoice level to help us be more accurate on payments. It's also giving us insight of excess cash when we're going to have that available, and deeper forecast accuracy suggestions to give us understanding of trends, what's happening year to date on certain categories, so we can track any of the large outliers. We also have the ability to have collaboration. And so now you can communicate with your team, have everything centralized in one workflow. And so when we go to our collaboration layer, we can see comments, we can add files, we can see priority levels to make sure that all the work is being concentrated in one platform. There's many different other things in the system, but I just want to focus on the positions in cash flow. When you think about Nilus, it's both treasury and accounting automation. And so we're really helping to help treasurers and controllers achieve their financial goals, especially with adjacent processes within the finance stack like collections, etc. But that's it. Thanks for viewing the demo. Great, awesome. So it's great to see and have a visual to really put a system to commentary. But I just want to extend a huge thank you not only to SFTMA but also to Alex from StackAdapt. I think it's always great to hear firsthand from industry leaders about how technology is shaping the future of finance. And so, Alex, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It's always great chatting.
Great. Awesome. I'm going to kick it back off to Michelle and let's get into some Q&A.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks again, both Matt and Alex Nilus for sponsoring the session and providing your insights today. We're going to head to Q&A in a second, but before we do, I want to ask our attendees to please use the QR code that will come up on your screen shortly to complete our brief program survey. We really pride ourselves on being education and community focused at the TMA, so we take your feedback seriously. Scan the code on your phone, take the quick survey after the webinar to give us feedback on the session and ideas for future sessions. In addition, we want you to be on the lookout for a post-event email tomorrow, which will include the PDF presentation Nilus has shared, the recording link from today's session in case you want to share it with any of your team members, continuing education credits for those who are collecting CTP, and then an attendance recap. So now we'll go into questions. I see a few here, but if you have any questions, go ahead and shoot them into the Q&A. So Matt, I'll maybe turn this one to you. Is Nilus using AI for FX risk management? And if yes, are any of your clients actively using the FX module?
Yeah, so when you think about Nilus, I want to maybe help demystify some of the thinking that has been introduced by the legacy systems. A lot of the workflows are kind of embedded now within certain screens. An example of that is the position screen, right? When you think about positions, it's not just understanding the allocation of cash and where it is, but it's also understanding what is my exposure to cash in general. So we can see things like counterparty exposure, but we can also see things like balance sheet exposure. Same thing on the forecasting side. The forecasting side is not just help me understand where cash is going to be, because FX is a function of that, especially if you have a multinational company. So it's also giving you a view into that transaction exposure. So when we think about the pre-trade exposure process within the hedging process, we do have companies using Nilus to understand and to kind of unpack their pre-trade exposures before they actually take hedge positions and moving on to hedge execution.
Okay, great. Maybe another question, what are the kind of top challenges you see from Treasury practitioners when you speak to them, Matt, and they're looking for a TMS or maybe even just any technology automation solution?
Yeah, I think the clearest challenge that remains is forecasting, to be honest. It's such a cumbersome process that touches multiple stakeholders. And I think a lot of finance people, we work hard. We work hard and we work within bookends of time. One of those bookends is, of course, the close cycle, right? We can't begin a lot of our process until the books are closed. And then the other bookend, if you're public, is when you go out to the street or when you need to present internally what happened within the month or the quarter, and then what will happen in the future, the outlook cycle. And so I think with those two things, it creates a unique challenge whenever you're using manual tools. Ultimately, if you're working in files, and there's a lot of talent out there that can do a lot of great things with Excel, but if it's not consistent and it's not automated, it's still challenging altogether. So I think forecasting still remains a challenge. And I think that's why we're starting to see this transition from, companies that maybe were working with a larger player, but forecasting didn't serve their need, because they still need something similar to Excel, right? It needs to be flexible. I need to understand how to use it. And then I also need to make sure it's applicable to my use case. I don't want to forecast the way you tell me to forecast. This is, you guys are the experts. The vendors are not the experts. And so you need to be able to have a solution that can give you the tooling to be able to match it to your use case. So as you forecast and as you're telling the story of the business, you're not left using, someone else's weapon. You're using your weapon, but ultimately it's more efficient and you can continue to, sit in the driver's seat and control the destiny of finance in that way.
Yeah, I have heard cash forecasting as the number one challenge every single year that I've been working with Treasury. So I would agree with that. Okay, a few other questions. Alex, can you share your experience connecting Nilus with your various banking partners and if there's any connectivity between an ERP or any other technology?
Yeah, sure. Happy to speak a little bit to that. Honestly, it took 2 weeks. If that, like I think we the Nilus team kind of came in, we set up a good working group. They were able to get kind of plugged right in onto into our Slack, and we were just kind of able to open up a great dialogue there. And we just kind of shared some good kind of requisite information with them, which they kind of plugged right into the system, did a little bit of testing, and we've been like up and running ASAP. And again, like that 2-ish weeks, like probably would have been faster, but I think we were late on like some sandbox connectivity on our end. So it was very fast.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add is like this is a persistent issue, right? Ultimately, with practitioners trying to work with technology, how long is it going to take me to get what you're telling me that the value proposition of what you're trying to sell me? And so, as Alex mentioned, we focused in the early days to make sure that we can not only connect into a multitude of partners, but that we can connect quickly. To get very practical, we do that in a few ways. And so, legacy TMS is kind of using SFTPs, or some are leveraging APIs. And those are things that we still leverage. We have built out APIs with multiple of banks, but we're also leveraging open banking to get access within 48 hours. And then we have our unique proprietary parsers to where if there is this like exotic account in Warsaw, Poland that you need to get access to, you can rest assured that that data is still going to be able to be presented and ingested into the system. So I think it's important. Time to value is important. We don't want to waste anyone's time. And when you think about the opportunity cost of implementing a slower system, it's not just what you're paying, but it's also the time you're losing having and sacrificing the automation. And so it's a very important point just to add there.
Can you talk a little bit about additional connectivity beyond banks, like other ERPs or accounting systems or other tools?
Yeah, Alex, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start at the start. I mean, like right now, really the big things that kind of jump out to me, and I might be missing something, is like is exactly that, the banks and then our ERP. So, and it's funny, like we're actually going through an ERP change right now too. So like that's super useful because Sage, but we were on before the NetSuite now, like it's going to be super easy to plug and play on both. And I'm happy to kick it over if there's other stuff that kind of comes to mind. That's all I'm thinking of right now.
Yeah, no, Alex, I think that's a great point because usually ERP transitions are what stalls projects. But because we have this multimodal connectivity approach, we can connect not just to one ERP, but multiple ERPs. So similar to Alex, we have companies that are going through transitions either onto NetSuite or off of NetSuite into something else, and we can be able to support them and plug directly into that provider. But we also have companies that are in an acquisition mode, and they're buying to build, and there's not enough time for actual M&A integration. And so they need to be able to quickly ingest not only bank account information, but ERP information to get a holistic picture across their companies. So that addresses the banking ERP point. The second point I want to address is the other box of systems. And the reason why I say other is that multiple verticals use different systems. We have some companies that are using Clearwater to manage their SMA and investment portfolio, and they want to be able to see their real-time kind of positions and mark-to-markets. We have some companies that are using Tipalti, for example, and they're doing AP runs, and they want to be able to see a one-to-many approach to their transactions that are happening on the bank side to all the many transactions that are happening on the Tipalti side. We have companies that are employers of records, and they're sending out multiple payments to wallets, and they're working with different payment providers, and they need to be able to connect those systems. And so the answer is we support all of these workflows. And so that's why I think it's really important to understand your process, but also to work with a provider that's flexible enough to adopt your use case. And so that's why, the multi-connectivity across multiple systems is so important and paramount to what we do. It's actually a key differentiator between us and a lot of the competitors.
Well, that's actually a really great transition. We've got two more questions we're going to ask. I'm also going to launch a poll because while I know you all want to hear from Matt and Alex, we want to hear from you as well. So the poll will be launched while I ask this question, Matt. What is Nilus's value prop versus other vendors? Travada, Panex, Palm, Treasury 4. I'm sure the list can go on and on. If you go to the AFP, like you just go down the booths, but a lot of them are offering the same similar service. What's the value prop? The space seems to be becoming overly crowded. Those are not my words, by the way. Those are the words of the questioner. Yeah.
No, it's true, and we don't shy away from that. The market is becoming crowded because I think right now, which is a good thing, Treasury and finance technology is getting its day in the sun. We've been waiting for decades to find tools outside of just the ERP that can help us do more than just reconcile, you know? And so now I think we're actually at that juncture, which is really exciting. So we love competition, bring it on. I think the key differentiators for us are three main things. One is Excel-like functionality and forecasting that actually works. It's connected to real data sources, and it's enriched by machine learning. And also you can apply generative AI to it. That is game changing. I think a lot of providers will tell you we have AI, but it's really just a matching engine. And so it's really important to suss out the capabilities to understand where AI is present and where it's not. The second thing I'll say is the multimodal connectivity, being able to connect to multiple systems to support multiple use cases. Right now, we're starting to actually talk to customers that traditionally did not think about a TMS because historically they worked with maybe a Kyriba, for example, and the Kyriba system didn't fit their use case. And so they thought TMS is not applicable to me. But now they're starting to really see the power of automation, of AI, because now they actually have something that can really think about their use case in a detailed way. And then the third thing I'll say that's a differentiator for us is we have Treasury expertise embedded into the fabric of everything we do. So when we think about product road mapping, when we think about our consultative approach and how we sell, when we think about understanding how we support our customers, everyone comes from a different vantage point. So the founders of Nilus, both Daniel Kalish and Daniel Scholl, came from backgrounds in payments, money movement, building out architecture on Fundbox. And so we understand the unique dynamic and challenges that practitioners face. And I think it's really important to have a solution that was built by people that understand your job and not just built by people that understand technology. I think it's a big difference when you think about matching the solution to the actual pain points of the practitioner community.
Great. I know we're nearing the end of time here. I just want to recap the poll responses. I don't know if we have a sophisticated audience, but 0% said they are doing, full manual work. So that's great, but pretty split in terms of basic automation with Excel. Half of the group has a TMS in place, and looks like a fifth are actively seeking a solution. We're going to watch another poll while I ask the final question that I see. How does setting up user entitlements work in terms of whether each user can be limited to seeing certain types of cash flows or subsidiary specific actions?
Yeah, so I think there's two things that are important there, both for those of you that are subject to our lovely friends in internal audit. I think audit trail matters. And so, you need to have the ability to understand the actions that are being taken, and that can be extracted from the system. And then I think the second use case is around multi-entity cash flow management. So we have some companies that, for example, they have an EMEA branch where the controller has the unique details and information on how that entity runs. And it's not centralized in, let's say, the US or Canada or the UK. And so they do have the ability to upload or submit information within that direct forecast that doesn't impact the parent level. And that's really nice to have that partition of workflow. So entitlements are available, and then you do have the ability to audit those entitlements so you can appease the watchdog in the organization to ensure you're doing the right thing.
Great, and I think we may have answers for our second poll on cash liquidity. We'll take a look here. How well are you utilizing your cash liquidity? So 13% said our operations don't let us optimize idle cash. Interesting. 75% said we optimize as much as we can, and 13% said we are able to optimize to the full extent due to, I can't read the rest of the question, but you get the idea. Any comments, Matt or Alex, on that?
Yeah. You're spot on forecasting and trust in our operations. Last one.
Ah, got it.
I'd say that doesn't surprise me, right? I think there's also always going to be a bias towards kind of conservatism and bias towards liquidity, right? Because might get mad if your rate of return's a little low, but you're going to get fired if you screw up the liquidity. So totally get that. I think that's a very fair polling answer.
Yeah, probably right below cash forecasting in terms of like priorities. It's like liquidity management next. And then we have one final poll for the audience. And maybe while everyone is answering that, Matt, Alex, any final remarks?
I mean, I guess I'll just quickly jump in. I mean, I'd say thank you very much to yourself, to Matt, to everyone for having me today. Always really fun to learn a little bit more about the kind of various associations out there. Get a chance to connect with kind of leading innovators and just be kind of exposed to more cool, late and great things. So thanks so much for inviting me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. No, Alex, it's been a pleasure. I think you don't always get time to do things like this with your customers, so I appreciate you taking time out of the day of your busy operations. And I'd like to think that Nilus helped you to do that. And so thanks
What
for
operations? I don't gotta do it. It's automated right now, man. We good.
that's right. No, so thank you. And Michelle and team, thanks for making this seamless. Was really awesome. Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for hosting this session. And looking at the third poll, inability to accurately forecast cash was tied for #1 with manual process and data accuracy. So certainly a relevant topic. Appreciate everyone for taking your time to join. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.
Bye now.
Thanks all.